Just Zoom.
Well, first, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
And I have some questions that I wrote down, not because I want our this time to be inorganic or inauthentic,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but
no, that's
because
fine.
I want to honor how much I appreciate having this opportunity to chat with you. And I don't want to waste that
Yeah.
opportunity, so I want to make sure I come in
No,
prepared.
that's fine. You're fine. You're fine.
So
I'm
just
happy to, yeah, I mean, just give me a sense of you
yeah,
and, start there. Start with like what you're doing, what you want to be doing, all of that.
absolutely, yeah.
Because I don't have a lot of background.
Yeah. So for the past 18 years, I have worked for the Scottsdale Unified School District, kind of working my way up. My first position was in their after school program called Kids Club, which is I actually was working there when I attended ASU and was going through the Mary Lou Fulton College of Education
Yeah.
back then, and then worked my way up to
When
being.
was that? When was that?
Oh, that might have been in 2007.
Oh, okay. Early. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
right around there. And then I did that for a couple of years and worked my way up to manager before getting a job in SUSD teaching third grade, where I taught third grade for 13 years, and then
Wow.
made the transition to assistant principal, and then most recently principal. But yeah, I haven't been loving the direction that the district is going in, and feeling like there are some decisions that are
Where are
being
you? I
uh,
know. Where are you?
Cherokee Elementary School.
Okay.
Great
I
school.
have a granddaughter at Copper Ridge.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
Uh,
yeah, I'm well
Beautiful
aware of
school.
all the things going on in Scotland.
You have a very unique perspective on when you see those decisions of reading through them a
Well,
little more clearly than most.
okay.
But yeah, just feeling like some of the decisions that were being made were not best for kids, and there wasn't a lot of consideration from site leaders being, put in. I think for the most part, my principal cohort does a really good job of advocating for kids, and I don't think that advocacy was ever really taken into consideration. So, um,
And you're just talking about all the what school, you're talking about just all the
the fallout with the school repurposes, yeah,
yeah.
and then just also like with the repurposing of those two schools comes the shifting of unique programs like special education programs, and
Yeah. Yeah.
those students to me. Yeah, I have a special place in my heart for those students, and I view them as some of our most vulnerable and at risk, and so um, seeing them being put in a position that doesn't set them up for success really bothers me and doesn't sit well with me, and so I had a really hard time coming to terms with some of the decisions that were being made about our site, and some of the special education students on our campus, and some being brought in, and
Mm.
just and knowing what a challenge accessing curriculum is for them anyways, and accessing their peer groups is, and so
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
didn't really. I had a hard time sitting with those decisions.
Yeah. See that.
But so
And we've been trying to do some work with the district too and trying to move some things forward, and it's been hard just because, I think, just all this other stuff going on right now. So
yeah.
I can tell you about some of that too, some of the things we would like to be doing there.
Yeah, well, and it's hard because I love SUSD. I mean, I've been in the district for so long because I do truly believe in the people
Yeah.
that are there. Like Dr. Scott Menzel is an amazing leader. I really have a lot of respect for
Yeah,
him.
like
Dr. Christine Bono, who's the superintendent in charge of elementary schools, I love her.
yeah.
The passion is there, and the right people are there. It's just unfortunately they're put in a hard spot because of the way the state's moving towards public education as well. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces there, and so just kind of feeling like maybe it's time for a change.
Okay.
uh,
Fair.
yeah, and so that's my background in a nutshell. My wife is a former educator. She taught self-contained special education for 7 years. And then when we had our first baby boy, she made the transition to work from home, and she did some like online intervention delivery kind of stuff. And now she's got her own private business, or like small business. But so we have a huge heart for public education, huge heart for education in general. So not a decision that's made lightly, but one that I think
Yeah.
is probably
Yeah.
best for my mental health.
So what's next for you?
That's kind of what I wanted to pick your brain about. I mean, I just,
Yeah.
I even have had a true like job interview in almost 20 years. Like, I think once
Yeah.
you're in the
Yeah.
system, it's really easy. Not easy, but the barriers are far more removed to transition upward than like an outsider. And I'm just really quickly realizing that the job market has shifted in ways that I could not have predicted or foreseen, and just the way,
100%.
I mean, it's all relationship and connection based now, which is
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
And And knowing how your resume transfers between a very niche, very specific field of practice to a broader sense.
Yeah.
Um, so just
All
wanted to kind
right,
of pick your
start your
brain about that stuff.
questions.
Yeah. So the first one is
That's
just,
good. That's helpful. Thank you.
yeah, the first one is just, what do you think educators most consistently underestimate about leaving the field? What do you see as like the biggest challenge or barrier that maybe people making that transition don't pour as much time and attention into as they should have?
Well, I think it's all about transferable skills, right? So I think we think about educators in general as being this sort of unilateral thing. And, it's a teacher in a school or it's a principal in a school. And the fact is that I think what is really overlooked is really looking at all the skills that you have and all the skills that are transferable and where can they transfer to. So, it's always interesting to me in the spaces where I am, how many people will say, "Oh, I'm a former teacher, I'm a former that," but they're doing things that are really sometimes related, sometimes not. But it's how do you sell yourself and how do you think about the skills that you have and what you're able to do, and then how do you present those in a way to a market that looks different,
Yeah.
whether it's still in the education market or it's outside the education market.
And that's honestly been my biggest challenge, is looking at my day-to-day responsibilities and saying, okay, to what context can I apply these outside of, a
Yeah,
school
right.
leadership? Because I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of project management that I do day to day, a lot
yeah,
of leadership
yeah. You're a
development.
systems leader. I mean, don't describe yourself as an instructional leader because you're really not. You're a systems leader.
Mhm.
That's a shift for us as we're thinking about leadership. But I think that's part of it. And then I think it's being able to broaden your aperture around what is the education market, right? So, and where do you go, right? So
Mhm.
there's lots of, there's nonprofit space, there's policy space, there's curricular space, there are lots of companies, right, that are in the education market, ed tech. And then you got to, say, okay, where is my next thing, and what could that look like given the skills I have and where, and what I've done,
Yeah. Oh, that's
and
great
where
insight.
and obviously where your interests are, because I always just say, follow your interests, but
Yeah. Because I think if you lose that as your North Star, then you're going to end up in a position that 2 years from now you're going
yeah,
to be resenting. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
I appreciate that insight. Thank you so much. I'm really interested to hear your perspective on this next question, because I think I have my own thoughts as a former teacher and current principal, but would love to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts on it. Is there something in how educators have been trained to think about problems, relationships, and success that actually become a liability outside of the school setting?
I don't think so. In the age of AI, oh my gosh. Like I think employers are looking for people that have all those skills.
Hmm.
So I don't see it as a liability at all.
Okay. Because
I think the liability, I mean, just given the work that we do, and as we're thinking about the organizational structure, right, of schools, is that the biggest liability I see of educators is that they've been working in solo class, inflexible, isolated classrooms. Like they don't work on teams, right? They don't work with other people from that perspective, right? So relational is typically with kids, or a PLC after school. But so it is the biggest liability is that they've worked in a structure that is not a normal working structure or organizational structure. And
Yeah.
that's the work we're doing right now, is to try to change those organizational structures.
That's amazing.
And so that's what Scott and I have been talking about, is are there schools that are interested in Scottsdale in really thinking about and changing their organizational structure to get teachers to work on teams, to think about what we call strategic staffing, because that is, to me, it's still the biggest liability for somebody walking out of schools, that the things you really haven't done as a teacher is you haven't worked with a team with distributed expertise.
Hmm. That's an amazing answer that I hadn't considered, but I can definitely see. I mean, even when I think about my own experiences, PLCs can be very hit or miss depending on the team makeup. I mean,
Yeah, but they're,
and even the best ones that I've been on, it's not a true shared ownership of problem solving. It's very much you feel like you're running your own business and it's a meeting of small business owners, so to speak. So
yeah, right, right.
that is a really
And so what
great
we're
answer.
doing, right, then is teachers finding time to build, in changing schedules, right? So there's a domino effect that the minute you say we're going to get out of the one teacher, one classroom model, and we're gonna have teams of teachers, then the schedule changes, then things like induction changes, then the need for a substitute changes, then you see less referrals, right? Because you have more eyes on kids.
Mhm.
Now you're able to actually support kids with special needs in better ways, and you're able to make sure that you've got somebody on that team that has that expertise for 100 kids instead of 25. So it starts to shift all of that. But those are the kinds of skills that I think educators are going to need today that they don't have. And if you're making transition from the education workplace called school to a business workplace, a nonprofit, any other kind of workplace, like those are the skills you're going to have to think about is now, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Because you weren't prepared to do that.
No. At the end of the day, the people who you're counting on most to hit deadlines or to contribute are, depending on what grade you teach, could be as low as 5 and 6 year olds,
Yeah, no, right. And, but this, and so in the schools that we're seeing now that have the most success, right, the success is attributed to two things. One is collective autonomy and the other is accountability. And so, so there's always been accountability, but not in the same way.
Yeah.
So now it's a sort of collective, thinking, and that is how businesses run. They run with teams. They run with, nobody expects, right? I don't have the expertise that my marketing person does, or my financial ops person, or my, whatever. But we're a team, and I lean on them. And teachers don't have that, and so that to me, that is the biggest gap for people coming out of education schools.
That's extremely insightful. Thank you. That's amazing. It sounds like you guys are at ASU are doing some amazing things that sound extremely exciting and reshaping.
You could have been doing these in your school.
Reshaping how we think about school structure, I think, is the first step towards progress and growth.
I'm looking for principals wanting to do it.
Good to know. Noted.
So, just saying.
No, I love that, and I love that there's the potential for that shift in cadence of accountability, because I think teachers will find that with that shift, they're actually able to accomplish so much more in the time they have. But I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. He's going down the path with us around that. We've gotten some funding for that. We're also working with him around what we call the AI Possibilities Lab. And helping to kind of think about some of the things that are happening in the district, and how do we use AI to think about possibilities, not just give us answers.
Yeah.
Whatever, not think for us.
Yeah, and not just.
So there are a lot of good things. There are some good things that are happening.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've seen apps that have been developed by kids using AI that blow my mind, and this it helps them learn the science behind the coding so much faster and more accessible too.
Anyway, next question.
So for the educators that you've seen make this transition successfully, what did they do differently than those who struggled?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, people I know have been, fairly successful. I don't know about people that have struggled. Because the people I bump into have all been successful in making that shift, right? And there's a lot of them. I mean, I think they're they're thinking very entrepreneurially. I think, a lot of the people that I know, right, are people that went out, started their own things. Whether it was a nonprofit, which I wouldn't tell you to go do right now, because raising money is hard. But, I think, I don't know. I think people find their niche. And again, I think it's about how do you take how do you take skills and talents and move it over to something else?
Yeah. That makes sense.
I mean, and you should know, like, I came out of 15 years of business and then got into education. So I was never a teacher, right? I didn't go that path. I'm odd for a dean of education to have never been in a K-12 school, but I never was. So I got out of school, did student teaching, decided I didn't want to teach, was in business for like 15 years, doing all kinds of things, sales management, training development, blah, blah. And then, um, and then got into higher, and then went back and got a degree, another degree, and then that led me to higher ed.
Wow. Yeah, you're the salmon swimming upstream.
Yeah, totally. Well, in a lot of ways, and then there's more to that story, but yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of answered this next question with the previous answer of kind of just leaning into your skills.
I'm going to switch. Hey, Zach, I'm going to switch you to my phone.
Yeah, no worries.
Because my computer's dying and I don't have a cord. I'm realizing I don't have my cord with me.
Yeah, no worries.
Hold on, let me just get on. Go ahead, but ask the question.
Okay. Where do you see the most natural fit for people coming out of school leadership? And where do you feel the education to corporate pipeline is the weakest right now?
That's a good question. I think it just depends on where you head.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just depends on what part of corporate you're talking. Like, just depends. Like, what are you thinking?
I think my strengths really lie in kind of the development piece, like, not necessarily like a corporate trainer, but just like leadership development and even project management. I've always really loved the coaching side of being an administrator, and even as like a teacher and instructional leader when I was in the classroom, I really loved the coaching cycle and providing actionable feedback and coming along someone who's struggling with something or someone who's excelling something in some area. But then also solving the complex problems that come with project managing, putting in systems of sustainability and fixing things that are broken. That also is something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not you're talking about a path that's like moves you towards like chief learning officer, right? Like that kind of path, right? In companies right now, where you're really focused on the teaching and learning of adults,
right?
Basically, right? Or whether or not it's really project management, which is a whole different, like that's just a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Which I think will be more difficult to flip to, but yeah, but I do think that if corporate is where you want to go, it's probably on the teaching and learning side.
Well, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards as well.
Or the foundation side, or a company that has an education foundation, right? That's doing, wants to do work in education.
Yeah.
You should talk to people who are CLOs.
Okay.
I mean, that would be, yeah. I mean, I would think about that group of people and go to that conference, and that's where I started. I started in sales and management because people said I didn't know anything, but I was 21, and I thought I did. I think you know everything at 21. But I ended up in training and development.
Oh, okay.
So that was sort of, if I had stayed corporate, that is probably where I would have ended up.
Interesting.
I liked that space a lot, and that position didn't exist at that time. Now a CLO that's a thing.
Yeah. And like with the ever immersive AI we're getting, do you feel like that's something that will be kind of whittled down or chiseled down to the point where?
Well, totally, because the reskilling of employees is going to be paramount.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, otherwise you don't have employees that are going to be able to do what you want them to do, and you don't want to lay off. But all this thing about people losing their jobs. Well, they're not going to lose their jobs if they really understand AI and they know how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the people that are going to push back, right? That don't want to go down that technology path, right? So, it's going to be imperative to really understand all of that, and on all kinds of levels, not just AI literacy. Like, I think you really have to dig into AI today.
Yeah. Awesome. And I love the idea you said maybe like going to a CLO conference or some kind of training development conference. I think that's a great place to learn what that work actually looks like in practicality and make some connections.
I mean, otherwise it's ed tech, it's, it's that kind of stuff too,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I see we're approaching the kind of the end of our time together.
Fine.
I want to ask what I think is probably the most impactful question from somebody with your scope, just because I've been having a lot of these conversations with people in other industries and people in education currently or educationally adjacent fields. But is there a question you think I should be asking that I haven't yet?
I don't know. I need to think about that.
Yeah, no worries.
I just think you have to look. I think you have to look at all sectors.
Mm.
Like I don't know whether or not corporate is just where where you think you're headed, but I think there certainly are other sector. Every sector has educators.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it that way.
I like that.
So whether it's government, NGOs, lots of global work that's out there right now, right, with international companies that do that kind of work, right? The work that was USAID, that kind of, but they're still doing that work. They're doing it directly for these countries now. So you've got companies like that, right? Research companies. Who also are doing on the ground, looking for people doing K-12, who really understand K-12. But, what does that look like in some other country that really needs to, it's trying to improve their system.
Yeah.
So, there's companies like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just looking at the sector more broadly.
Okay.
So that you're really looking at all the choices here. I mean, there's, and then it's what do you need to do to, like, what skills do you need?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you need a doctorate? Do you need there's all of that, right? Do you need research? Do you need, do you need to understand, is that even of interest, right? Because there's all these policy and research kinds of opportunities, and people are always looking for people in that space too.
Yeah. Well, and like sector specific certificates and things like that. That's one of the things I've really come up against is like, well, do you have a certificate in this? I'm like, no. So it's been
but that's what I'm saying. But you're going to have to follow your interest. My guess is you're going to have to upskill in some way. Particularly around thinking about ed tech and technology and all those kinds of things, no matter where you go.
Yeah.
But I think it's I mean, just reading job descriptions is a good thing.
Yeah.
Gives you a sense what people are looking for.
For sure. Well, and I think, and you mentioned this before, but I think also doing enough research of the company to know kind of what their mission and vision is, and if it's something that aligns with my own, personal goals.
And then, I mean, there are private companies too. I mean, you think about companies that do curriculum work. Mm-hmm. It's Pearson, it's Amplify, it's, companies like that, McGraw-Hill, like all those companies, right, that are out there. Full Bloom is a private company, right, that does work around special ed.
Oh, okay.
That's a great company we've been working with. Again, it's a private company, but where you've got a bent for thinking about special ed, is that the kind of, is that a company, right, that you might want to take a look at? Are there ed tech companies, right, that are also thinking about some intersection, between special ed and education,
right?
As they're thinking about, a variety of things. So, there are definitely places out there, to think about how do you combine interests as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so it may be, so it could be going to do training for Honeywell, but it could be, finding companies that are still education related, where they would actually appreciate the skills you have.
Right.
And they're looking for people like you, right, who are trying to make that transition. But what else do you need?
Yeah, that makes sense. Getting like you said, getting a broader perspective of the different sectors that are available, because I think I haven't really touched into the nonprofit.
Have you already left SUSD?
Yeah.
Or at least you will at the end of the year.
Like the Make-A-Wish Foundation is one that not Make-A-Wish, sorry, Teach for America is one that I've been kind of mulling around in my head a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you anti-TFA?
No, I'm not anti-TFA. I just don't think it's the most stable organization right now.
Okay.
I just know too much. I know too much about TFA.
You've seen behind the curtains.
Oh, I've been a supporter. No, I've been a supporter. I'm on the board.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
on the board for TFA and FEMA.
Okay.
So and we prepare all the TFA core members, but I know at the top of the organization, I think they just brought somebody new in. Yeah, it's not a huge organization. Either,
Yeah.
But maybe, there may be things there. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Carol. I really appreciate it. I mean, I feel like I've walked away with a lot of really powerful insights and a lot of homework to do, which is good. I love learning.
But you should look at some of the big companies. You got to look at Pearson. You got to look at Amplify. You got to look at some of these education companies that I think are out there, doing good work. And then do you want to do domestic or global or there's just all kinds of there's a dichotomy here around all kinds of things, right? In terms of what kind of sector do you want to be in, and do you want to stay in education, or are you leaving education? Are you leaving the K-12 part of education to go do adult education or higher ed, right?
Yeah.
Because there's jobs in higher ed too, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a huge market here, in this state is, looking at admissions and student services and, project management in higher ed. And don't dismiss that either. That's a huge market sector that I wouldn't, you should pay attention to.
Definitely. Absolutely.
So especially if you want to do project management kinds of things, right? That's, should look at ASU and I don't even know if you're ready to move, right? Like that's a whole nother thing. Whether or not you can move.
Yeah.
Because if the answer is no, then that's a whole nother, but there are things here all the time.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look. Yeah. I'm kind of done, I think, with education in the sense of being like a school leader or, somebody who's specifically tethered to a district.
Yeah.
But higher education, I think, is a really good, pivot point for me too, because it still
but it's not
draws the same
necessarily as a
skills.
faculty. I mean, we hire a lot of staff, right? We hire project managers. We hire,
Yeah.
we're hiring people all the time, right? With different skill sets. And so that's, but I'm just saying that's a huge education market sector, that keeps you close to education, but in a different way.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Carol. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Anything I can do, let me know.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.